Alright, so in this video I'm gonna do some of the problem solving so that you can see how I tackle a problem. Okay, and you can see that I'll be using a lot of var dump and echo statements and die statements. Die function, die, you'll know what it means. But this way, what I want you to do is, as you watch the video, again, follow along, type exactly what I type, and see if you can apply the way that I build things. Okay. Alright, so again, the worst way is to write hundreds of lines of code and run it and see that it fails, right? Because it takes longer to troubleshoot. Alright, so let's do this. So this is what I want to do. I want to create a function called average that takes an array like this, and then it computes the average, and it computes the average and returns it. Okay, so if sample is an array of these numbers, and if output is assigned as the average of that sample, then this should print the average value. Okay, so let's just copy this and let's see if we can make this work. So I need to create a function called average. Okay, average, and I'm going to take an array, and how am I going to compute the average? So let's create a variable called total. And total, initially I'm going to set that as 0. And I'm going to go through, let's do for each. For each array, information, each row in the array. So I'm going to do, for each row in the array, I'm going to store that information in a variable called row. Let's first echo out row and see if this works. So let me comment that out. I'm calling average sample, and let's see if this works. Okay. Yeah, did it get each value in the array and echo it out? It did. Okay, so my function is working. So now what I want to do is, now that I know that for each loop is working, I'm going to say total is going to be equal to total plus row. So what it does is, it does this, what's total plus row? That's going to be, in the first case, 0 plus the value plus row, and then it's going to compute that and store that into the total variable, right? So the first time this runs, it's going to run total is equal to, and the first time it runs is 0. What's the first row in the array? Is 10, right? So that's what it's going to run. Second time this runs, it runs total is now equal to, what's the value of total? Now is 10, right? And then the row is 3. Okay, so it's going to do 3. So total is just going to keep adding the value in this variable. Okay, so let's do this. And we can do this. Echo total. So let's do this. Total is now total equal row. Row is now row variable is now, and then because we're putting things in the as the HTML, let's put a break statement like this. So the total is now 10, right? So if you do that, total is now 0, and then it's 10. And it just keeps adding the value of the row, right? Okay, so how do we compute the average? The average is basically this total divided by the number of rows. Okay, how do we get the number of rows? We could just, what's the number of rows? Number of rows, I haven't defined that, but number of rows is basically, I can just do another, use the count functions, and I can say number of rows, and I think, let's comment it out. Let's just see if that works. Number of rows, 8. Is that true? Yeah, it is. Okay, so then I say average is really equal to the total divided by number of rows. And now let's echo out the average. 40. Is that good? Yeah, I think it is. So now I need to return this value, return average, back to whoever called this function. So now output is going to be the value that's returned from the average function. And then if I do echo output, it does 45.75. Alright, so now we need to, let's get rid of some of the things that we built for comment purposes. Okay, and it returns 45.75. Okay, let's add some other, and it works. Alright, pretty cool. I could have actually done a little bit refactoring this I could have just said this just as a short word, and this plus equal, that just means it basically just means do that. Okay, but well, for this let's just leave it that way, like this. I can, instead of doing number of rows, I could have actually just done this. Okay, but what if you actually didn't know that there was a function that returns the number of stuff? Then I could have done something like this. Number of rows is initially set that as 0, and then as it goes through each loop, I can say number of rows is equal to number of rows plus 1. And then I could have just done this too. Okay, and it would have done the exact same thing. Okay, this number of rows is equal to number of rows plus 1 is so common that I can just do this. And it would do exactly the same thing. Okay? Alright. I could have also just done something like this. Compute that and compute total divided number of rows and return its value to the function, to whoever called this function. That does the same thing. Okay, so I can do some, this is called code refactoring, and it works exactly the same. Okay, but readability is better. So this, instead of that, I actually like this. I think this just reads better. So, yep. Code, it should read fairly well. All right, so I think we. Yeah, okay, so at least you know how I think and how I use a lot of var dump. I don't know if I use var dump, I think I did. But just step by step, save it, test it, and make sure things are working.